Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using more of Jaded Blossom's September 2025 magical release. But I also wanted to share some new products I recently received from Glassboard Studio. They sent me one of their beautiful magnetic glass craft mats. There are lots of different color options. I couldn't resist this lovely pink color. The size I have is 18 by 24 inches, and it's the middle size. There's two smaller and also two larger. So lots of different options. The mat is perfect for crafting. You could do stenciling, mixed media, ink blending on it. It cleans up very easily. It's also heat resistant and stain proof. And they have a variety of different magnets you can use with your mat. These are super strong. And they also come in a fun assortment of colors. And yes, I requested it in pink. This is the MegaMag ruler. I have the 6-inch size. It's also available in 12-inch. They also sent me two of their MiniPawn magnets. They have a non-slip pad for increased holding power. So these are perfect for holding down your paper while stenciling or ink blending. And the final product they sent me is their HexaFlex Organizer Set, and yes, I got it in pink. This is a really fun organizer. You can customize the layout, so you could have it all in one long row. You could do it as a cluster. Lots of different options to fit in your craft space. You could buy a second set if you need more organizers. There are 4 different height containers included, and they simply slide together. The set also includes 4 adjustable dividers. You simply put these in at the bottom of the container, and they help to separate your different crafty items like paper piercers, scissors, pens, paintbrushes. It's so fun to have all the different products coordinate beautifully. And if you're not a fan of pink, that's okay. There are lots of other color options available. Glassboard Studio has other magnet options and fun craft products. If you want to check them out, I do have links in the description box below. And they also provided me a discount code to share with you. So if you use my code Kristie, you'll save 15% at Glassboard Studio. So I'll be using my new magnetic glass board while I make cards using Jaded Blossom's September 2025 magical release. The main products I'll be using are their lightning stencil, their magic swirl stencil set. I have the Stay Magical stamps and coordinating outline dies. And I'll also be using the new Gnome Wizard add-on set. This is a fairly large set, so I did need to separate it onto 2 magnetic sheets. I will zoom in a bit so you're not getting my lights reflecting on the glass mat. For card design number 1, I have some pattern paper from Craft Consortium's Grunge Light Tone collection. And I'll be stenciling on this piece using the Magic Swirl stencil set. There are several different swirl designs on this set. You could just use some of the individual swirls. I'm adding lots of the swirl designs on the background. I'll hold the pattern paper in place with the MiniPawn magnets. I'll grab a silicone mat to hold my ink pad. It helps keep the ink pad in place so it's not slipping while I'm using it. The ink color I'm using is Catherine Pooler's Chiffon. It's a very light yellow, and it'll add this beautiful tone-on-tone design to this light yellowish green pattern paper. I'm not worried about inking the very bottom area since I will be covering that up with some cardstock. But I do need to ink the upper left-hand corner, so I will move that magnet out of the way. So now I'll remove this stencil, and you can see this beautiful swirl star background. And that ink color will lighten as it dries. Grab a baby wipe and quickly clean up the craft mat in the area where I got a little extra ink. The pattern paper background piece is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. At the very bottom, I'm adding a small piece of a gray pearlescent cardstock, and I cut this out using Jaded Blossom's Border Die Set number 2. Adds this fun stitch detail and a little hillside. I'll add that piece at the very bottom of the pattern paper piece, and I'll layer this on some green cardstock. It's just a little bit darker than the pattern paper. That cardstock piece is an additional 1/8 of an inch. So 4 1/8 of an inch by 5 3/8 of an inch. I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. So now I'll set aside the card and start assembling the wizard. So I've already die cut out all the pieces. I have them stored in the small craft stack tray from Spellbinders. For the very background, I use black cardstock. And this will all be covered up. It's just used as a template as you add all the other die cut pieces to assemble the wizard. For the wizard, it's best to start with the coat. So there's the one solid piece, and you'll only see a tiny bit of this underneath the beard. And then there's the 2 side pieces. I used a lighter blue for that background, darker blue for his main coat and also the hat. For the inside under area of the hat, I used an even darker blue cardstock. So after adhering the coat, I'll attach the hat. And this is the full hat piece. It has the top portion and the brim. Now I'll put that inside back area of the hat. And the top curve of this piece lines up perfectly with the bottom curve of the brim of the hat. I use the same blue cardstock for the rim of the hat. And there are 2 different options for the top of the hat. You can keep it solid, but there's also a piece that cuts out a bunch of stars. If you want, you can inlay all those tiny pieces or simply cut out a solid piece and then add the cut out version on top. And that's what I'm doing for my wizard. So behind the very front area of the hat, I use some silver holographic paper, so it's super sparkly. And then I'll add the final cut down hat portion on top. The next step is to attach the beard, and that very top curve of the beard also lines up with the bottom curve of the hat. Next, I'll add the mustache. I use the same gray cardstock color for both the beard and the mustache. If you want a little more contrast, you could use different colors, or you could ink the edge of the pieces. On the wizard add-on set, there are 2 different sizes of noses. I'm using the larger size for this wizard. I will pop it up using some thin foam dimension. Grab the small foam squares from scrapbook.com in the 1mm thickness. Next, I'll assemble the arms. For the very background piece, I use black cardstock. This will all be covered up. There are 2 different options for the arms. There's straight arms and also a right and left arm that's slightly curved. This wizard will have 1 straight arm and 1 slightly curved that will be holding a scepter. I use the same skin tone color for the hand and also the nose, and this is the Nectar color from Concord and Ninth. To attach the arms, I put a little bit of Barely Art glue at the very end and then place the body on top. Now I'll flip it over, and just to help secure those until the glue fully dries, I'll add a piece of clear double-sided adhesive tape. Now I'll assemble the scepter. For the very background piece, I use dark brown cardstock. For the wooden area, I'm using that same dark brown. And for the gemstone on top, I'm using some super sparkly silver holographic cardstock. So once that's assembled, I'll add some glue on the black hand area of his arm. Adhere the scepter down. Then I'll put glue on the back of the hand and adhere it in place so it looks like his hand is wrapped around the scepter. Now the hands that don't show the fingers are included on the Wizard add-on set. The hands that show the fingers are included on the original Gnome set or the extra Gnome part die set. For a sentiment, I've already stamped and cut this out. Have a magical birthday. I use black ink on white cardstock, and I'll adhere the sentiment in the upper left-hand corner. I did put foam dimension behind the wizard. After removing the release paper, I'll add the wizard on the center of the card. And I decided not to add any embellishment since it already has that beautiful magical star background. Now moving on to card design number 2, I'll be using the lightning stencil this time. I have some pattern paper from a 49 and Marcotte collection, and I cut it out using Jaded Blossom's Stylized Rectangle dies. I'll be using Simon Hurley's Astro paste, the Frostbite color. I have a scrap piece of white cardstock. I'll adhere the background pattern paper die cut piece with some mint tape from scrapbook.com. Then I'll place the stencil on top, hold that in place with more mint tape. Now I'll grab the MiniPawn magnets, put them in the outer corners. I love this Astro paste. It goes on clear and adds this lovely sparkly background, but the glitter is all embedded so you don't have to worry about making a huge mess. With a palette knife, I'll spread out the Astro paste. I'm not worried about getting it at the very bottom since I will be covering up that area. We'll make sure to get into all the openings of the little lightning bolt, trying to keep it at about the same thickness. I'll remove this stencil, and with the palette knife I'll also scrape it along the outside edge of this paper just to remove any of that extra Astro paste. Now I will set this aside and let it dry completely. If you don't want to wait, you can dry it using a heat tool. I know it's not dry yet, but I already love the look of this. So while I wait for that, I'll work on the card and also the image. For the very background, I used some gold holographic paper and I cut it out using one of Jaded Blossom's Scallop rectangle dies. I'll add a panel of this yellow tone-on-tone petite print paper from Doodlebug Design. And the pattern paper piece is 3 7/8 of an inch by 5 1/8 of an inch. I'll put adhesive on the back of the scallop die cut and add it on a card base. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. For this card, I'll be assembling one of the student wizards. So you may recognize this little wizard from the famous wizard school. For the very background, this time I used white cardstock and all of this will be covered up. For the student wizards, you use the same coat and arm pieces as the full-size wizard. Use gray cardstock for the main piece, black cardstock for the coat. There are 3 different head options for the student wizards, all featuring different hairstyles. I use white cardstock for this headpiece. It will all be covered up. There are 2 different face pieces. One includes the ears and the other doesn't. You could just use the one with the ears, but by adding the second piece, it adds a little more dimension from the front face and the ears. So I'll adhere both of the face pieces down, then I'll add the hair. And I used a really dark brown cardstock color for the hair. By having that background white piece with the hair, it helps you line up the hair on the very front image. Next, I'll assemble the scarf. I use white cardstock for this very background piece, red cardstock for the 2 longer pieces of the scarf, and then to add the little stripes, there's a die that cuts out just those smaller areas, and I use some yellow cardstock. There are 5 of the individual pieces to add the alternating color of the scarf. I'm sticking with 2 colors for the scarf, but you could use several colors or you could use some fun pattern paper. 3 of the yellow pieces go on the scarf area that would be around his neck, and 2 of the yellow pieces go on the scarf area that's tied over and hanging down in front. So once I have all of the yellow pieces attached, before adding the portion of the scarf that hangs down in front, I'm putting a scrap piece of cardstock on that little white area. That way it stays at the same level. Then I'll put glue on the back and attach the final piece of the scarf. Now, since his head has several layers, I'll be adding foam dimension behind part of the scarf, putting little foam strips on the right, left side, and also a square at the portion that's hanging down. I'll put glue on the back of the area that's attached to his chin. Now I'll assemble his arms. He'll have one straight arm and one slightly curved, since he'll be holding something. I use black cardstock for that background area, and also black cardstock for the sleeves of his coat. After adding the individual coat pieces down, I'll put a little bit of glue behind the top area of the curved arm, place the body on top. And I find it just easier to line them up by placing the body on top versus putting the arm behind. I'm not attaching the other arm yet, since at this point I realize I forgot to cut out one of the hands. So I'll get to that in a little bit. I'll finish up his face. He has the smaller nose. I will pop it up using a foam square. Then I'll attach the glasses. And I found it easier to attach the glasses before the eyes. That way you can get them at the correct placement. So for the eyes, they are very small. I'll first add a tiny drop of Barely Art glue, and I picked up the eye die cut pieces using the wax tip end of Scrapbook.com's Craft Pro Pick tool. Next, I'll attach his other arm, just putting that little bit of glue down, placing the body on top. And here's where I realized I forgot to add the little lightning bolt scar. With my tweezers, I carefully slipped it underneath that top area of the glasses. That way I could tuck the lightning bolt scar in place. And it's nice that the hair has that little separation, perfect placement for the scar. So now I'll assemble the owl, and this is a white owl. So for almost all of the pieces I use white cardstock. The very background piece has the hand hold area. The next one is the full body, including the feet, and then the final one is the body without the feet. So if you don't want your gnome holding the owl, you do have the option, just don't add the piece with the handhold. There's a separate piece for the front wing. For the eyes, the larger circle, I use the same white colored cardstock. And then for the pupils of the eyes, I use black cardstock. Adding that small drop of glue, then picking those pieces up with the wax tip end of the Craft Pro Pick tool. For the owl's beak and also the feet, I use orange cardstock. I'll add that little beak right between the eyes. Then after adhering the hand, now I'll place the feet on top. So it'll look like the owl is perched on the wizard's hand. Now I'll put glue on that black hand area of the arm and attach the owl with the wizard's hand. This wizard will have bare feet. I put foam squares on those little foot stub areas. The feet dies are not included on the wizard add-on set. You can get these from either the original wizard die or the extra part set I mentioned earlier in the video. I went and cut out the hand so I could add his other hand down. I wasn't sure which shape it was, so I did cut out all 4. Well, now I'll add the final foot, and there is our little wizard all assembled. I will pop him up with foam dimension. I'll grab my card and go check on my Astro paste, see if it's all dried. And it is, you can see how it's turned mostly clear, but it still has that sparkly finish. At the very bottom of this die cut piece, I am adding a strip of wood grain pattern paper, and this is from Honeybee Stamps Grain and Grunge collection. I wanted to add an area for the gnome to sit on. I'll put glue on the back, adhere it down, and I will place an acrylic block on top for some added weight so it'll dry nice and flat. And I did let that sit for a few minutes. Now I'll put glue on the back of this die cut piece and adhere it on the center of the card. Grabbing a larger acrylic block, place that on top, let that sit for another few minutes. For a sentiment, I've already stamped and cut out Your Spell-tacular. And I do have foam dimension on the back. I'll remove the release paper, adhere it at the bottom of the stylized rectangle. Next, I'll add the wizard, putting him right above the sentiment. For embellishments, I'm adding 3 small red star die cuts, and these are from the original embellishment cluster die set from Jaded Blossom. It's still one of my favorites, and I use it all the time. I'll add 2 stars in the upper left-hand corner and 1 in the lower right-hand corner above the sentiment. So there is my finished card. I love how this turned out. The lightning bolt stencil with the Astro paste looks so pretty behind the little wizard gnome. For my next 2 cards, the main design is the same as this first wizard, but I am adding a different wizard, one of his friends. So I've already assembled most of him. I'm just gonna add the red hair on top. And he'll be holding a magic wand. I cut out this wand piece with the hand hold area from dark brown cardstock. I'll adhere that down, then attach the hand on top. So now it looks like he's holding the wand. I will be popping him up with foam dimension. I also used a different sentiment, Stay Magical, popped it up with foam, added it at that bottom wood grain area. Then I'll add this little wizard on top. For embellishments, using the same 3 red stars. And I use 2 different sizes of stars from the embellishment cluster die set. There are 3 different sizes of each shape. And there are several different embellishment cluster die sets that are available. For final finishing touch, I'll add some small freckles on the gnome. So there is my finished card. This one's super cute as well. And I forgot to mention, for the background, I used the Magic Swirl stencil instead of the lightning. The next card features the other gnome friend. I've already assembled most of the gnome. I just need to add the hair. This front hairpiece is the same I use for the redhead gnome. I'll add that one down first. And then there's the background hairpiece to give the wavy curly hair. This goes behind the gnome. So I'll add glue behind the gnome's head and then place it on top of the back hairpiece. She's also holding a magic wand just in her opposite hand. The sentiment on this card is You Are Wonderful. And I added those 3 red embellishment stars. So there's the final card featuring the 3 wizard student friends. And if you love Jaded Blossom's MDF pieces, they did release a set with the stand that includes the wizard and also the student wizard. And they also have a die set to decorate the top area of the stand base. Now, I know not everyone's a fan of the wizards, but the wizard add-on gnome set can be used to make non-wizard gnomes as well, and the design is adorable. So I have 3 more cards to share with you. I'll assemble one. The pattern paper I'm using is from Doodlebug Designs' Snow Much Fun collection. For the image panel, I'm using more Doodlebug Design, but this is one of their petite prints. It's a tone-on-tone white with light gray polka dots. I'll layer this panel on some white shimmer cardstock, and at the very bottom I'm also adding a snowy white hill for the gnome to sit on. I'll add the image panel on a scallop rectangle die cut, and I use this beautiful snowflake pattern paper. Then I'll add this piece on some purple tone-on-tone polka dot paper. Now I'll put adhesive on the back, add my card front onto a card base. On the inside of the card, I'm adding a narrow strip of the polka dot pattern paper just for a little extra detail. It's a great way to use up those leftover narrow pattern paper scraps. This card will feature one of the girl gnomes, and I have her mostly assembled. I used some plaid pattern paper for her little winter sweater, gave her a purple and white scarf. And one thing that's really fun about this design, if you want a bald gnome, just don't add the hair. Jaded Blossom has so many different options for their gnomes now. I will be adding hair for this gnome. Starting with that front piece, I use dark brown cardstock. I'm also giving her some purple glasses, and I use some purple pearlescent cardstock from my stash. Now I'll put glue on the back of her head, adhere her on that hair background piece. And for a little bit of separation from the front hair piece and the back, I'm giving her a headband. And the headband die is from Jaded Blossom's Bride and Groom Gnome add-on set. It wasn't designed to work with this gnome add-on set, but it does work almost perfectly on the top of that front hair piece. I used a light purple cardstock, and I love the contrast against the dark brown hair. I did pop her up using foam dimension, and I'll have her sit on that snowy hill. For a sentiment, I'm adding Hello Winter. I'll adhere it underneath the gnome. And the sentiment is from Jaded Blossom's Winter is Gnoming stamp and outline die set. For embellishments, I'm adding 5 small snowflake die cuts, and I use some silver holographic paper. The dies are from the Winter Embellishment Cluster die set. I'll put 3 in the upper left-hand corner and 2 above her hand on the right side. And I did use all 3 sizes of snowflakes. I love all the sparkle from the silver holographic paper. Just 2 more snowflakes to adhere. So there is my finished card. I think she looks super cute in her little winter sweater. Following this main design, I made 2 more cards. This next gnome has blonde hair and a blue polka dot sweater, and the final gnome has dark brown hair and a snowflake blue sweater. So if you're not a fan of the wizards, you can still use this wizard gnome add-on set to make an adorable assortment of little gnomes. And if you don't want winter cards, you could always skip the scarf, but I thought it was a really cute feature. Now here's another look at the 7 cards I made using Jaded Blossom's September 2025 Magical release. This is a really fun release. And if you missed my part 1 video featuring the new dragon and owl gnome friend, I will link it at the end of this video. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I will include links in the description box below. And if you're looking for a new craft mat, be sure to check out Glassboard Studio and use my code Kristie to save 15%. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.